Hi there everybody, Chesra here. I've been AWOL for a couple of days. I've been caught in that zone where so many of us often find ourselves, where worlds are colliding. And I'm talking about your world at work compared to your world in your own personal life and compared to things you may take for granted, like your health. And there are two songs that have lyrics along the lines of two worlds colliding, both with two very different connotations. And what I wanted to do was contrast the lyrics of the two songs and the outcomes. And one song is by the Australian band In Excess, and their lead singer died in a tragic situation, young in life, and he was shortly followed by his wife. But in their version of the song, two worlds colliding has very romantic, happy forever after connotation. The other song is by a little known and vastly underrated band called Morphine. Their lyrics are brilliant, and interestingly enough, their lead singer, vocalist, also died young, Mark Sandman. Their take on two worlds colliding: when two worlds collide, nothing survives. Now, if you had to look at the history of who sang what, where, and when, you would find that the Morphine version of the song is the more accurate of the two. Certainly, when the worlds of Michael Hutchence and Paula Yates collided, well, they didn't survive. And yeah, so I guess what I'm trying to do is, in a collision of worlds in my own small little life, trying to ensure that something survives, not nothing. Because with any luck, it will spare someone else having to learn the hard way. Because once you've learnt the hard way, one thing you know for sure is that you would willingly and freely give a map to the easy way to anyone. Life is very hard. Sometimes it doesn't appear to be so. On the surface, things can look very well with you. And indeed, they may be very well with you. But it's a turn of the dice. Your life can go from top of the world, wonderful, to catastrophic in seconds. If there's ever been an accident or a close call, you'll know how fragile and tenuous your physical safety really is. And then if you go back and you look at world history, realize that it's nothing short of miraculous that humankind even survived. We are so maladapted to the elements. Our skin isn't adequate protection against cold or heat. We don't have many skills as human beings. We actually have very limited abilities. We can't see anything below the frequency of infrared or above the frequency of ultraviolet. We simply can't see it. It's not because failing as human beings, it's because as human beings we are wired so that we can only see a very narrow band of the spectrum of light. What we know of the world is limited to this tiny spectrum. We can't see the world as it looks under an electron microscope. No idea how it looks under an electron microscope for the most part. More importantly, we don't care. Why should we? There are so many more important things in the world. So how I got around to this entire discussion on worlds colliding is because in the midst of personal turmoil and so much turmoil and upheaval in the broader world, if you bother to look, I don't know, most people seem so engrossed by celebrities and what's on Netflix that they've become anesthetized to reality. Nothing matters to them except that which matters to them personally. They don't care. From I guess, spiritual or philosophical level, if you don't care about anything other than having your own needs met, you are a bottom dweller on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If brand names are as important to you as breathing and eating and keeping a roof over your head, well, you're not special, you're just especially retarded. I'm sorry to be blunt and un-PC about it, but there's no other word. You honestly think that a brand name on a piece of clothing is more important to you than the consequences of your government's actions in another country? Yeah, you're a bottom dweller. You're not a self-actualized human being. You are simply another clone out of the factory, indistinguishable, really, from the herd. Your life is meaningless. No, really, it is. Your life has meaning to the world in equal measure to how much you care about the world. 99% of the time, even those of us who do care, and there are many who do, even those of us who do care, can't physically care about everything. We are limited. I speak from personal experience. It is impossible to care about everything that is happening. At some point, something has to give. Or worlds and values and what's important to you, they start colliding, and you if you don't have a compass and a line in the sand about what's acceptable and what's the right thing to do and what depths you have inside of you that you would prefer not to know about. If you don't care about these things because you're too busy trying to get a promotion or buy a new car or whatever, you're a bottom dweller on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You have more or less just made it from actual survival, and actual survival has a lot of different meanings. There are people who cannot survive without permanent access to their smartphone. I mean, you literally have little fetuses and they roll out of that room and their little thumbs already clicking. You use a smartphone before they can talk. And you take away that smartphone and their world has collapsed. That's it. There's nothing else. You killed all life. It's the end of the world as they know it. So what survival means is very different to different people. Talking to a biologist or a medical doctor or something, well, they can give you parameters within which survival is possible, likely, less likely, impossible, and then you always have the exception to the rule. I have these strange survivor stories from plane crashes and expeditions up Mount Everest where everybody else died and this one person got away, and we're fascinated with that. Like, who was that person? Who was that one person who made it out of the battle or the plane crash or the ship sinking? Who were they? What extraordinary fate? And yet we are that person, because the mere fact that we exist, that we survive, that we are even here to ponder on such things, and as much people do ponder on anything at all besides themselves, the more you look at that, the less likely exponentially your chances become of being who you are, born where you were at the time, date and place when you were born. Very unlikely that you would be predictably and reliably predictably born where you are. Statistically, over a short period of time, you can predict where people come from and so on very reliably, most especially with technology. You can predict where people come from, what their interests are, who they are, And you can control them with that information, and people are doing just that right now. That's why we have this all-pervading censorship occurring around the globe. You are no more than a statistic, a blip on a screen, and no matter how rich or good-looking or important or powerful you think you are, I assure you that over time you become insignificant. Our great kings who are only remembered in dusty books that nobody bothers to take off the shelf. At once they were immensely important, and they held the powers of life and death in their hands. One word and they could snuff out somebody's life. And of course they still exist today. So where am I going with this? Right. What's important to you? When things fall apart around you, that's from the Yeats poem and the wonderful book Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. When things fall apart around you, what sustains you beyond oxygen and water and a certain level of nutrition? What sustains you are your values. What's important to you? The stories of mothers who managed to lift up heavy weights, cars, to save one of their children trapped. These are not simply apocryphal. They really do happen. When things matter to you, it's amazing how much caring about something can sustain you and pull you through even the darkest times. And a very important book and a great mentor to me is St. John of the Cross. His book, The Dark Night of the Soul. Wonderful title, wonderful title. And people say it's a difficult book to read. And it's, very philosophical and difficult to relate to. I disagree completely. If you have ever been in any shape or form in a dark night of the soul personally, and we will all get there sooner or later, but if you have ever been in one, you will know that what is the most important to you is not necessarily the most beneficial to you. So what you care about is the only thing that makes you in any way unique and not a statistic. Your willingness to be out of step with the herd is the only thing that sets you apart from mindless, mind-numbing conformity that has been inflicted on us on a mass scale. We are being invaded by an alien empire, and it's very peculiar to me that even people who are very averse, so they say, to the concept of empires historically, are suddenly extraordinarily enamored of the idea of an empire when it's dressed up in a way that appeals to them. And suddenly they care passionately about having the rights to an infinite number of genders. And they do so in the name of diversity, and they do so in the name of tolerance. And really they aren't tolerant, and they aren't diverse. What they are is they are tools of an alien empire technology, which is invading us again. And unless we live in very remote tribes which are under immense mortal danger, because the machine does not like to have individuals doing their own thing, having their own language and traditions, they just wipe them out. They quite literally go into the Amazon all the time. And there are tribes who have lived in peace and harmony for millennia with their surroundings, coping just fine, in fact better than many modern day people, technologically advanced people, and having a lot more common sense and innate internal wisdom than we will ever comprehend. We simply can't comprehend it because our entire lives are now confined to where our smartphone takes us, where the Google algorithm defines our interests as being. You can't care about apparently clashing things because no, that's just unseemly. I happen to care about many things. Too many things, I would say, and many would agree. And I'm just simply wired like that. I'm not particularly special on my own in that way, because for as long as recorded history has existed, there have been people who cared passionately about the rest of the world and what happened, and they've always been in the minority. I want to draw a very important point. Caring is not the same thing as imposing your utopian ideal on the rest of the world. You can dress up your invasion and your brutally forced dominion over humankind any way you want to, whatever sugarcoats that pill and makes it easier to swallow. You can dress it up any way you want, but leave the word "it's because you care" out of it. It's nothing to do with caring. What do you mean when you say you care about a utopian and perfect world? Is you care about having your values inflicted on everyone else. And that's not high-minded, that's not caring, that's self-aggrandizement and narcissism. As I said, you can call it whatever you like: tolerance, diversity, multiculturalism. Let me tell you, it's none of those things. What it is just a pernicious form of brutality, barbarism, and a very low-level thinking. Very low-level thinking. And yeah, I don't care if you're sitting in the palace or you're sitting on the pavement with nothing. If all you care about is what matters to you personally, you don't care. When people say they don't care, believe them, because they don't care. They don't care whether you're dropping bombs on innocent people in distant lands to fund your military-industrial complex. They don't care. They don't care. What they care about is being a good and compliant cog in the machine. And in this, humans are entirely complicit in their own enslavement. We are not helpless, hapless victims. Oh no, au contraire. We are willing accomplices. We like to stay in step with the herd. Yeah. So I realized the enormity, the depth and breadth of the scale that caring represents, and why not caring is just so much easier. When I got an email in my day job from a gentleman in the United Kingdom who wanted my opinion on which of two pronunciations for a place name in the south of England I agreed with. This is a trifle in the world. And why would anyone care? Really, what difference does it make? People tend to think of pronunciation as a very elitist concept, and they make assumptions that I am interested in pronunciation for elitist and snobbish reasons. And of course, this is what I call the luxury of first world thinking, anybody who's learned English as a second language will know that the very people who proclaim they don't have time for pronunciation, who cares how you say a word, these are the very same people who will turn on you and roll their eyes when you get an English word wrong or mispronounce it or something like that. You have this divide where people are trying to learn English, care immensely about how they pronounce words, because it has a very real impact on the way they are seen and perceived if they are in the English-speaking world. You can't say an English word properly, well, that may cost you a job or may cost you all kinds of things. So pronunciation is in fact far more aligned to my caring about the broader world than it may seem on the surface. Yeah. And sometimes what you care about, all these worlds collide and you have to juggle them around and try and remind yourself what is important to you. And what is important to me is actually the small things. What I realise increasingly over time is how much I wish I had listened more, paid attention more to small things. Idle chit-chat, crazy guy who was in the military and seemed to be rambling incoherently, and yet when you look back, much too late after the fact, you suddenly realise, oh my god, he wasn't insane. he was talking about a reality I didn't want to believe. But of course we don't care about these things, which is why the world continues to live on the edge of total chaos and ruin due to our own actions and omissions. So yeah, I got this note, and it actually wasn't about the pronunciation of the name of a small place in England. It was about a broader reflection of my ideals and what I hold to be important and what matters to me in this life as a whole. Let me tell you, there's no profit in bothering about details like how you say a small place name. There really isn't. Why do I do it? I don't know. I must be mad. At the end of the day, I was sort of wrestling with this, and I gave this gentleman my full and impassioned views on the preferred pronunciation and why I believed it was important and it was something worth preserving and cherishing. And I think he was quite surprised at my rapacious and wordy response, and as well as my enthusiasm for it's really a very minor blip on the horizon for most people. Yeah, at the end of the day, it was what matters to me. What will I drop all sense and sanity for? And that's it really. I believe in the cumulative effect of the small things. All these small, I don't care about this and I don't care about that, that has a cumulative snowball effect. If you look at avalanches, they don't start out catastrophically. It's a couple of pebbles just fall the wrong way and then they hit another couple of pebbles and that gathers momentum and mass and then it all accelerates, and next thing you know there's been an avalanche and people are buried and lives and so on are lost and so on. Yeah, small things matter. The way we speak has a power and an importance, and you don't necessarily see that living in the first world and only knowing English and being very familiar with basic pronunciations such as you don't say cupboard, you say cupboard. And when I was a child, I remember being very thoroughly laughed at and mocked, because when the teacher asked me how my lunch was, I said it was in the cupboard. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? Cupboard? Why would anyone get such a ridiculous idea? It's a cupboard, obviously. Until you look at the word. It's cupboard. It's written like that. But who cares how it's pronounced? I mean, why did I bother to learn how to pronounce words properly? Why did my mother send me to elocution lessons in order to make me comprehensible? Because it matters. It actually does matter whether you say cupboard or cupboard. Everything matters. And the less importance you attach to things as you go along, more of your soul you sacrifice. It's a monster that tells you that things don't matter. And it's okay to keep redrawing a line in the sand. When the tide washes it away, you just redraw it, and it doesn't matter where it was before. Of course, over thousands and millions of years, that coastline is going to erode and change. Trillions and trillions of even the slightest waves will eventually sculpt out the land with unimaginable force. When you look back in time, go and look at the Grand Canyon. That's the work of water. Water is nothing. I mean, you can control water, can't you? It's a couple of drops of water, nothing. Yet cumulatively, they have the power to quite literally carve out another landscape. And that's the power of all the small things. You don't care about this, you don't care about that. Yeah, it snowballs up. And we live in a world that is comprehensive proof that not caring leads to disaster. Now, if you're an animal, a deer or a gorilla or whatever, your not caring is irrelevant. It's unlikely to have much of an effect on your surroundings, except that, say you are a herbivore, if you don't have enough predators and you don't care about how much grass you consume, very soon you will eat your way into starvation, because resources will not replenish themselves in time for you. They won't be able to keep up with you as you grow in number and so on. But as a deer, you can be forgiven for not caring where your next bite of grass comes from. So long as it's there, you just keep munching away, and when it's all gone, well, you all starve and either the entire herd dies out, or some of you survive and adapt to another environment. Oh, humans are apparently no more aware than deer who will eat themselves out of house and home because they don't understand, or they lack the ability to factor in consequences and look ahead. It's funny because we think of ourselves as so advanced and so clever. Yeah, we're so clever that we bombing half the world, killing each other. Humans are really notable, if you ask me, from a biological point of view, in that they are an interspecies predator. And this is relatively rare. You don't see deer and buck eating each other. Well, that's what interspecies predator implies. That within our own species, we will hunt and kill each other. That's not biologically natural. Really obvious when you think about it. The last time you saw a sheep mauling another sheep to death Not because it was hungry or needed to, but just because whatever. It's really not the rule, is it? It makes us quite exceptional, and not in a very flattering way. Wow. Yeah, that's us. That's brilliant people with our technology, our computers and our smartphones. Not caring about how we pronounce words. Unless, of course, we're personally involved and some idiot comes along saying cupboard instead of cupboard, in which case it's hysterical and eye-rolling and all the rest of it. It's inconvenient. Basically, it's inconvenient. Pronunciation is a function of convenience. And if somebody says something in a way that is inconvenient to the herd, they will quickly shame them into conformity. It's not entirely a bad thing. In itself, conformity is neither good nor bad. There are shadow sides and light sides to all concepts and ideas. If you take them in the abstract, conformity can be a very good thing in times when you are in mortal danger and need to know who's on your side and who's the enemy and so on. So at that point, conformity is actually a life-saving necessity. You recognize your own, you avoid danger and so on. The other side, it has a very negative connotation because the more you conform, the more you have to sacrifice who you are. Most people don't really care. As long as conformity gets them what they want, they'll give up anything. There are people who will kill to get their hands on a pair of branded sneakers. Quite literally kill another human being. For it's absurd, isn't it? Aren't we all completely off our collective rockets? Yeah, I think we are. Do you see yourself as sane in a profoundly insane, maladjusted world? It is the scariest day of your life. I would, hand on heart, rather be thought of, or no, it doesn't matter what other people think, but I would rather think of myself as being the one who doesn't get it in a world of sane people, me being the insane person, than the other way around. The other way around is absolutely terrifying. It means the lunatics are running the asylum. They've got the keys, they've got the locks, guards on their payroll, and being true to yourself is now a quirky issue. Very survival depends on it. Your survival depends on things. What matters to you becomes very important. Nothing matters for you. You don't make it through tough times. Go back to the dark night of the soul. St. John of the Cross was a priest, a Catholic priest, who his superiors judged him to have disobeyed their rules and standards, and so they tortured him. And the dark night of the soul is really a handbook to how he suffered the most appalling ritual abuse. Now, you don't have to look at this from a religious perspective. You can become totally nihilistic, and you can the root of Friedrich Nietzsche, who was talking exactly on the same lines. I know a lot of people will see that as very contradictory. Isn't Nietzsche the one who declared God is dead? And here I'm saying he has a lot more in common with some vague Catholic saint who was obviously a devout believer. That's bizarre. No, he doesn't. Actually, he does. Because what Nietzsche said was, he who has the why can bear almost any how. What he was saying is, your beliefs in what is important, what matters, can sustain you through the darkest times. And that's really the theme of the dark night of the soul. That's what St. John of the Cross was saying. I know a lot of people don't like the concept of saints because they're secular, and other people don't like the concept of saints because it doesn't conform to their ideas on religion. But I'm going to go with calling him St. John of the Cross and not diluting it to John of the Cross or anything else, out of great deference and respect for the magnitude of what he wrote and what he had to endure in order to have that insight and write it down. And maybe, most likely, you've never heard of the book. You might have come across the phrase Dark Night of the Soul. You've probably never read the book, and it has absolutely no meaning to you. But to me personally, it was like this saint had reached his hand over time and space, and his words, his story, his how, and his why, most importantly his why, he endured all of that. They reached over and touched me, completely unrelated, at a time in my life when I most needed it. That's the power of, and the importance of small details. It may not seem like a big deal to you. So some vague person, some nebulous, undefined time in history wrote a book which is largely seen as unreadable, difficult, impenetrable. But to me, personally, and I am just a minor player in all of this, because I'm quite sure he reached many more people than me. To me, his words and what he went through were immensely important. This is just utterly bizarre and alien to you, but everything tells you that this shouldn't matter. Seriously. Some Catholic guy was tortured once upon a time and wrote a book about it. Old news. It's not old news. Not old news at all. There are people all around the world, right now, going through a dark night of the soul. You might not know them, and they may not matter to you. You don't care about them. And why should you? So busy caring about yourself. That's what we do, don't we? We all do it. All of us. Even the saints and greatest people and the best and most wonderful people are very far from perfect. The human is a study in a fall from grace, whether you're religious or not. I mean, given the world, quite literally, and our thank you has been, take what I want. I don't care about the rest. I don't care. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter until it affects you. And that's where you have a very paradoxical problem on your hands, no matter which side of the spectrum you're on. Sooner or later, something is going to matter to you personally. Sooner or later, it's going to be very important to you. Whether dominating the algorithm the way Google has is important to you, and then dressing up your imperial, bullying, narcissistic tendencies is important to you, have an effect on a lot of people. And by the way, it won't particularly be you. You'll simply be glomming on to some archetype running through mankind. In this case, it's the imperialist archetype. We will come in, we will make you conform to our ways, we will make you speak the way we do. Or else. It's bare naked imperialism. And we don't see it, because we don't care about small things. That's why pronunciation in the United Kingdom often runs so counterintuitively. It's not actually the result of a natural evolution. It's very often the end product of numerous invasions by empires and attempts at conquest and forcing the local British population in the British Isles, roughly what we call United Kingdom today, because that didn't exist as an entity until fairly recently. The Romans invaded, and then the French conquest came along in 1066 and all that. And every time they came, they made incursions onto the way people spoke and what language they were allowed to study in, and what was the acceptable language in the courts and in positions of power. That's how you enforce an empire. It's not actually brute force entirely, because brute force can only take you so far. The rest is done by people going, yeah, oh, well, okay, whatever. They're here now. Maybe I can get on their good side and get a pat on the back. Maybe get me some of the action while I'm at it. That's how imperialism happens and thrives. It thrives by conformity, by people caving, by people not having a line in the sand. And that's why no matter how much people reject the notion of empires, until they start looking and learning, small things do in fact matter.